Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming at KVI.com and on the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up this hour, we have awesome audio about Donald Trump destroying everybody in the White House press briefing room. But before we get to any of that, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
So over 50% of the parents in Seattle public schools have considered yanking their kids out. They spent $100,000 on a survey that revealed 86% of parents in the Seattle public schools district, definitely not one of the right-leaning public schools district, are concerned about the quality of education in the schools, and the quality control failure was a top reason for disenrolling their kids. Additionally, enrollment dropped 19% from 2012 through 13, that school year, to 2023-2024 school years. Making things worse is fewer children born in Seattle are enrolling in Seattle public schools, which means they're choosing private school, they're choosing charter school, they're choosing homeschooling. The district funded the survey to understand why 4,000 kids bailed on Seattle schools between the 2019-2020 and 2023-2024 school year. Guys, you could have given me lunch. You could have bought me lunch, and I would have told you why they left. Can we go through the reasons here? And if you can think of any more, give us a call at 206-421-5757 or text me at 206-421-5757. Why do you think they pulled their kids? Well, what was going on? Oh, right, COVID. So, first of all, you weren't having school, and you said, here's a computer, just go on Zoom. And parents said, well, this is stupid, especially for preschool and kindergarten and special needs kids. So they were all right out of there right away. Then they started hearing all the insanity that the teachers were actually saying when mom and dad are sitting at the dining room table trying to work, but they have to listen to the kids' lesson because they have to make sure the kid's in Zoom school and not watching The Wolf of Wall Street on TV or something like that on Netflix. So what they did was they started hearing what the teachers were saying. And they said, wait, what? What is this radical insanity that they're teaching? Then on top of that, you start cutting music, you start cutting art, you start cutting shop class, you start cutting all this other stuff. And now magically a kid like Ari Hoffman or Mike now is like, well, I just don't even want to be here anymore. There's nothing for me. So now you put all that together. Gee, why do you think all these kids left? Can somebody explain to me why all these kids left? I'm having a real hard time understanding it. If you can think of any more reasons, you give us a call at 206-421-5757 or text us at 206-421-5757. Let's not forget also that 71% of Washington State's 8th graders aren't proficient in math. 69% aren't proficient in reading. This is according to the nation's report card. Additionally, 69% of Washington 8th graders are not proficient in reading compared to 58% in 2013. So those scores are only going down, 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 down. Now Seattle Public Schools for a minute. Seattle Public Schools enrollment has suffered so much that now they were talking about closing schools. And let's not forget, they had to close these schools because they didn't have enough students. They didn't have enough funding. They're trying to solve the budget gap. And they say, well, closing schools might actually fix this. But then the parents went ballistic because they were going to close the good schools and put their kids in the bad schools. Or they were going to close the bad schools and put those kids in with the good schools. And parents weren't going to have that at all. You put all that together, you've got a recipe for disaster. Now, the superintendent who has presided over all this, Brent Jones, said, no, okay, we're not going to close the schools. Don't kill me. Don't fire me. So despite the cratering test scores, declining enrollment, spiking crime, the district still approved a contract extension for Jones. Do you know how much this guy makes? $348,000 a year. $348,000 a year. He can do math. Nobody in the district can do math, but he can do math. You want another reason why kids are leaving the public schools? Washington State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Chris Rakedal, had a video go viral today, once again nationally, for all the wrong reasons.
We have a civil rights framework in this state. It includes trans youth. This is a biological question. It is quite simply inaccurate to say biologically that there are only boys and there are only girls.
Whoa. Okay. Well, now we know why the kids are failing science. Because this is the superintendent of public instruction saying that. It's biologically inaccurate. Hang on. Can we back that up a second here? Let's do that clip again, shall we?
We have a civil rights framework in this state. It includes trans youth. This is a biological question. It is quite simply inaccurate to say biologically that there are only boys and there are only girls.
Okay, that is biologically inaccurate, what he's talking about. That is not accurate. You have two genders. Are there some other people that are born with different abnormalities? Yes. Would you like to know the stats on that for a second? Because I actually went and pulled them up. The American population, 1.7% of people born have different equipment than they should. Something's not quite right there. Of those, 2/3 of them identify as men or choose to be men when born in that fashion, because usually they have the male equipment and something else in addition to it. So if you're going to say, oh, well, a boy could be a girl could be a boy, biologically, because I did the research, they're going to choose to be a boy in the hermaphrodite circumstances. That's what it's going to be. So if they're going to choose to be a boy, this doesn't give them license to compete in girls' sports, because that's what this whole thing is talking about. What direction was Chris Rakedahl going in this? Let's hear the whole clip and what he was saying.
We have a civil rights framework in this state. It includes trans youth. This is a biological question. It is quite simply inaccurate to say biologically that there are only boys and there are only girls. There's a continuum. There is a science to this. There are children who are born intersex. There are children whose chromosomes and their hormones aren't consistent with their sex at birth. That's not a debate we're going to have today. I just want to remind you of our civil rights obligation. Our state laws make clear that students get to identify and participate in activities based on the gender in which they identify.
Whoa. Okay, there you lost me. All right, we were having a normal conversation, which is where I thought you were going with this, where you bring up the chromosome thing. That's a fair point. You bring up some other, that's a fair point. But then you go how they Nope, that's where you lost me. You do not get to compete in girls' sports because you are not as good as the other boys in boys' sports, and you want to win some trophies. That is not how this works. But that's what he's trying to push. Hey, anybody in the Trump administration listening right now? Because that clip is going viral as we speak. That clip is going viral. Donald Trump has an executive order. No more boys in girls' sports. So can you guys come out to Washington and do something like this? Today, the American Association of Governors, which means every governor in the U.S., was at the White House. Bob Ferguson wasn't there for some reason. We're going to find out why Bob Ferguson wasn't there, but he wasn't there for some reason. But the governor of Maine was there. And she's one of the ones, Janet Mills, she's a Democrat, who says, no, we're going to keep letting the boys who have self-esteem issues compete against the girls. Well, Donald Trump wasn't having that at all, and here's what happened.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Awkward. So we'll see you in court. Yeah, you will see him in court. Wow, that was something. Are we really having this fight? Where, I say this all the time, I feel like a broken record. Where are all the women's lib people who are saying this is ridiculous? Girls are getting hurt. Plus, this is an 80-20 issue. The majority of Americans agree that boys should not be in girls' sports, and yet they keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing with this stupidity. It's absolutely insane. It's absolutely crazy. I mean, really, come on, guys. Now, what a lot of these schools are doing is they're trying to find ways against the executive orders that are saying no to DEI, and they're changing the title. Jonathan Cho found this clip. This is, what's this guy's name right here? This is Seattle College's DeAndre Fisher. So they're coming up with new terms for DEI. They're scrubbing websites as fast as they can to try and make it seem like, well, we're not doing DEI. But then when you listen to what they're actually doing, yeah, it's DEI.
Really, it was the feedback has been, we're excited. Now the work can begin. It's really about intersectionalities, really understanding the importance of one's identity. Really has multiple layers and understanding what that looks like, what is the social capacity of one's identity, and really understanding that, bring it all together for our students, for our faculty, for our staff. Hey, we are one here at North, and we're excited to be one, and we're excited to understand that we all come from different backgrounds, different religions, different racial backgrounds, whatever that looks like, socioeconomic class, able-bodied, whatever that is. And they made a big, bold statement in the hiring of the 3 associate vice presidents of equity, diversity, and inclusion, Dr. Hunt, Dr. Betsy, at Central and South.
And yourself.
And myself.
Oh, there it is. Equity, inclusion, same kind. We just took the D out of it, but we're using the exact same terminology. The exact same thing. You know, Chris Rakedal has actually told the state school districts not to change their DEI programs. My friends, how many times have we been through this? When you have plummeting scores that are only getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So what you've done is you said, well, you know what, we're going to do less English, we're going to do less math, we're going to do less science, and we're going to replace it with this DEI nonsense. Why do you think your scores are so bad? You're spending all this time telling the kids they're a bunch of racists and not actually teaching them how to live life, not actually giving them any skills whatsoever. You're that committed to this? Chris Rakedal, what are we in, his 3rd, 4th term at this point? Things are only getting worse. And yet Washington sent him back for more. He's doubling down on all this. Every single thing he is doubling down on. And nothing's getting better. In fact, it's only going to continue getting worse. You know why? The volunteers over at Washington Doge found something out. That the Democratic-controlled Washington legislature gives $8.6 million of your dollars to the Washington Education Association. That is the largest teachers union here in Washington State. All the other unions are part of the Washington Education Association. They're part of the big national ones. And then they donate money to the WEA Political Action Committee to support liberal candidates who pass this insane legislation. So your tax dollars are funding political candidates, the ones who keep making your kids' education worse and worse and worse and worse. And yet Washington State says, oh, we have a massive budget crisis. In fact, I heard that Bob Ferguson said he didn't go to the White House today because he had to deal with the budget crisis. Hey, the people from Washington Doge, the volunteers who are doing this of their own free will and their own free time, have found close to $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion in waste, and we have a budget deficit of $12 to $16 billion. I'm not talking about partisan issues. I'm talking about why the hell is tax money going to this? Why is tax money going towards a political action committee? Oh, right, because they want to win elections. Because they want to hold on to their power. You should be asking them why $8.6 million are going to a teachers' union. It's not educating teachers. It's not going to the classrooms. It's not going to a school district. Why is it going to the union itself? And then why are they spending that money? It should be, fine, you want to keep getting this money, we're going to kill your political action committee. But no, because those are the stormtroopers. Those are the people who knock on doors for political candidates. Do you see how deep the rot goes in the corruption in Washington State? And here's something else to think about. It used to be there wasn't that big of a difference between public and private school in terms of education. There wasn't. I'm saying that as a kid who went to private school. I had plenty of friends who got a great education at some of the best public schools in New York. I have friends here who got a great education at some of the public schools in Washington. But the public schools here have been intentionally crippling themselves with this DEI nonsense. What they've been doing is taking away classroom time for kids to spend it on this racist garbage. And you know what? I still can't do the Pythagorean theorem. I still suck at that. You know what? Maybe some extra class time might have helped with that kind of stuff. But now the gap has grown so huge because a lot of the private schools are not spending the time on this stupidity. I'm not going to say all of them. There are plenty of woke private schools out there that are doing the same stupid nonsense. But then when it comes time to apply to college, you got to compete with the kids that actually know what they're doing. But then forget college because college is woke nonsense these days. You got to compete in life. And you're not going to get as good job opportunities. And you're not going to get as great options because you were crippled by the school system. It didn't give you the tools you need to succeed in middle school, to get into a better high school, to get into a better college. This whole system sucks. After COVID, did they give you more in-classroom time to make up for all the Zoom school? No, they didn't. Now they're dealing with it. By the way, private schools are guilty of that too. But instead, what the public schools did was they doubled down on this DEI nonsense. And they still wouldn't extend the school day. Look, if you said, all right, public school ends at 3 o'clock, for sake of argument. Let's say public school ends at 3 o'clock. And you go, we really feel strongly about this DEI garbage, so we're going to add 30 minutes at the end of the day. I'd have less to complain about because then you're not taking away from classroom time. But what you did was they didn't have school for 2 years in some cases because of COVID. Then you said we're going to give them more of this DEI stuff. Oh, all the kids are behind because we locked them out of schools for 2 years? Oh, well, you know what? Kids are tough. Kids are resilient. Kids are like rubber. They'll figure it out. They'll be fine. Pat, pat, tussle, tussle, tussle. They're not. The kids are not all right. Meanwhile, what are they spending your taxpayer money on? What are they spending it on? Teachers' unions. Power, control. That's what they're spending it on. While pushing this radical gender ideology garbage like Chris Rakedahl is doing. And how has that worked out? Scores have only gotten worse. Schools have only gotten worse. So we're down this path of self-destruction. I cannot believe that me, as a conservative, is asking for federal intervention to come clean up the public school system because it has gotten that bad. How crazy has this world gotten when we're asking for that because things have gotten so bad that conservatives and libertarian types are asking for federal intervention? And for those of you who think, oh, well, I'm listening to this and I have nothing to fear because my kids go to private school. My friends. They make state standards, which then the private schools have to comply with if they want to get the credits and they want to be an accredited institution. This affects all of us. I really hope the Trump administration takes an active interest in what's going on around here. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. Seattle police chief says he will not assist ICE in rounding up murderers and rapists. Oh, is anybody surprised when they hired this woke police chief? We'll give you the details when we come back. You'll listen to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Didn't Bruce Harrell, mayor of Seattle, just a couple days ago say Seattle is rising and things are getting so much better? What is he, Bane or something? Yes, it rises. Wait, I got to do that right. Yes, it rises. Right. What the hell was he talking about? You see anything getting better around here? Wait, hang on. Let's go to the news. Let's just see what the news is about. Hang on. Front page of Como News. Police are investigating 2 crash and grab incidents at Seattle pot shops that happened within 45 minutes of one another early Friday. Oh, wait. So this isn't the Sean Kemp one, which happened around the corner from us like 2 days ago? No. These are all new pot shops. Number one, we have too many pot shops. But number two, this is just the news these days. So the circumstances of the 2 crimes are similar, but it's not known if they are connected. One happened with the Reef Cannabis on Capitol Hill. At East Denny and East Olive, Seattle police said several people arrived in 3 vehicles. One was used to crash into the business, causing structural damage. Even with the damage done to the building, the suspects still couldn't get inside. So they fled in 2 vehicles and left the crashed one behind. Great, wonderful, fantastic. Now engineers have to determine if the building is safe to be in. If the damage is too severe, the building may have to be demolished. Hang on. That may be a new spin on this one, Mike. Usually they go through the doors, but now people are reinforcing the doors. Now they're reinforcing the structure, and they have to use that. They have to tie that into the beams and the columns that are holding up the building. So now, because of these lunatics, now you may have to tear down a whole building. What? So you can steal a few $100s worth of pot? In March 2024, the Reef Cannabis store in Seattle's Georgetown neighborhood was struck in a crash and grab burglary. Police said the suspect stole products before taking off in 2 vehicles. Another one happened at Canazone Pot Shop in Soto neighborhood on 1st Avenue near Walker Street. Seattle police said in the first incident, several suspects arrived in 3 vehicles. One was used to ram the front of the building, but the shop has a vestibule-type entrance, and the car only breached the first of its 2 doors. They left one of the vehicles behind and fled in the others 2. What do you want to bet that other vehicle is stolen? Anybody want to take bets on that? I'm sure it probably was. Now, while they couldn't get inside the store, they did hit a gas line. It's amazing they didn't blow up the building. The fire department showed up and was able to stop it. So where's Bruce Harrell at? What's he up to these days? I assume he's talking about the crime and how he's going to solve it, right?
All right, Mayor. Heard any good jokes lately?
I haven't delivered any good jokes lately, that's for sure. I've heard a few, but haven't delivered a few, apparently.
Have you seen the negative feedback from the joke during the State of the City address?
From many friends, trust me. But many people thought it was a funny joke, so it goes both ways, I suppose.
What was the idea behind it?
The idea is, number one, I'm giving a very substantive speech during the State of the City. A lot of serious issues to talk, and it's a lengthy speech. You know, these speeches go 40, 50 minutes, and so we thought we'd break it up with a little humor. People were very concerned about where we are in getting a Sonics team back. And so I assume people are reading the headlines. It wasn't the greatest news coming out of the All-Star break. So we thought we'd mix it up a little bit, have a little fun with it. But we also, I think people understand how intent we are in getting a team back. So some people thought I was actually announcing a team. I didn't believe they would think that. So I do want to apologize to anyone that really thought that that was going to be the announcement. But it was all made in good jest.
That was cold, right in front of the former mayor, Greg Nichols, the mayor who gave the team away.
I didn't think of that either. You know, I wasn't going for the headlines in the newspaper. Mayor Harrell's joke falls flat. Once again, I'm openly trying to keep the buzz on the Sonics real. That one of the factors that the NBA will take into consideration is the fan enthusiasm. So hopefully this fired them up. So mission accomplished if they got fired up.
Okay, this is what we're talking about. I'm not saying we don't want the Sonics back, though. At this point, I kind of.
I am. I'll stick my neck out.
There we go. Okay, there we go. Exactly.
Kick rocks.
Exactly. That's how I kind of feel. I was going to say.
Take you and the senior reporter with you.
That's.
Shut up.
Exactly.
Shut up.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree. See, Mike, you lived here your whole life, right? Lived in Washington your whole life.
Yes.
And listen to Mike, people. That's where we're at right now. But here's something else. He said he didn't know people were going to think he was announcing the song. He didn't. What? That was the joke. The whole joke was pull out the basketball, make people think that was the joke. It was a head fake about that. But not just that. You want to know how bad he is at this? You know how dumb he is at this? He took a whole interview on this. And you know what he should have said? Should have said, look, it was a bad joke and it detracted from the fact that we have less crime or we have less homelessness or here are my policies. Mike, that was a 3-minute interview. We cut 90 seconds out of it because I just couldn't anymore.
Right.
Because it was all rambling about the Sonics joke and all that. The interview was about the Sonics, and not once did he think, hey, you know what? Maybe we should discuss what else is going on in the city. Maybe we should talk about that. But that's why nothing's getting addressed around here. Because the dumb jock in office all he thinks about is sports and where his next cool place he gets to go is and who's going to drive him somewhere, as opposed to record homelessness not getting better. Crime hasn't gone down, and you still haven't been able to recruit police officers. We're still talking about the Sonics? Oh, well, I'm sure they're dealing with other very important things, aren't they?
Illegal food vendors are popping up more and more in King County.
These unsafe food operations can get you really sick, even hospitalize you. Fox 13's AJ Janival shows you how the health department is changing the law.
These changes will go into effect this year, and that means food businesses like caterers, bakeries, and food trucks will post these safety ratings, things that you've seen in restaurant windows in the past. Now you'll see them in these businesses, helping you make a safe decision when it comes to what you eat.
Okay. So tell me, if it's like California where they have an A, B, C in the window, you think somebody's going to go into that restaurant that has the A, B, C, whatever it is on the window? If there's a giant homeless encampment outside of it, or if it's boarded up because somebody drove a car through it, I'm sure this health department thing is done with all the right reasons, but it's not going to solve the other problems you got going on there. It's not going to solve a single one of them. This is the insanity we're dealing with around here right now. This isn't real life. This isn't real life. This is make-believe. He's pretending to be mayor. That's really what it is. He likes the idea of being driven around. He likes the idea of maybe being remembered as the mayor who brought back the Sonics. Well, it don't look like it's happening right now, does it? And here's something else. If he loses this year, the next guy gets to claim credit for it, if it happens. He'll be like, oh, remember that guy Bruce Harrell? You go, Bruce who? How many people know the name of the mayor of Seattle right now, even while he's in office?
You made a joke yesterday when we were talking in the bullpen about, like, if there's, like, some investment group, it'd be like, who's Bruce Harrell? Who's Chris Daniels? Who are these knuckleheads? We just wanted to buy a basketball team.
Exactly. I mean, I even forget the name of the ownership group that did the Kraken thing.
Oh, sure.
You really think Jenny Durkin had a lot to do with that? Or do you think it was these guys going, hey, NHL, we're going to drop $800 million on this new stadium. And then Jenny Durkin goes, look at me, I'm wearing a hockey jersey. Come to my city. Worst cheerleader ever. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. Don't forget, coming up at 5:45, your chance to win fantabulous prizes. And at 5:30, we got Lars Larson dropping by for Lars Unleashed. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. So I was in Israel for a week and forgot to ask somebody to get my mail. But I've got one of those very, very secure mailboxes, and it's in good shape. And you know what? My mail was perfectly fine. But I came back, I think there were maybe 3 pieces of mail I actually needed. And most of them were statements I could probably get electronically now. The rest of it was piles of garbage. Now, I know older people rely on the mail for bills and all that. I get it. I'm not saying get rid of the post office. But the post office has been losing money for decades now. So something's got to be done to fix it. And apparently, Donald Trump has his sights set on the post office. So this is what he said earlier today.
There are reports that you were considering merging the United States Postal Service with the Commerce Department. Can you elaborate on if this is something you're considering?
Well, we want to have a post office that works well and doesn't lose massive amounts of money. And we're thinking about doing that, and it'll be a form of a merger, but it'll remain the Postal Service, and I think it'll operate a lot better than it has been over the years. It's been just a tremendous loser for this country. Tremendous amounts of money are being lost, and we think we can do something that will be very good and keep it a very similar way, but whether it's a merger or just using some of the very talented people that we have elsewhere so it doesn't lose so much. It's losing a tremendous amount of money.
Now, UPS doesn't lose money. FedEx doesn't lose money. DHL doesn't lose money. It's DHL or else. I mean, if these guys were losing money, they'd be out of business. So what can the post office learn from those guys? Now, I'm not saying this is necessarily one of the things they can learn, but are federal employees who work for the post office getting overtime because they work on Saturdays because it's a Saturday? Or is it a schedule where it's your work day so you don't get overtime? Here's something else. We found out that now that they're looking into the FAA, that the technology is beyond outdated. And it's a miracle more crashes haven't happened. So my question is, how outdated do you think the technology is at the post office? I just look at the trucks, guys. Those suckers, I know they get new ones from time to time, but those suckers look like World War II Jeeps. So there are, I'm sure, ways of saving money at the post office. But if you touch the post office, people go ballistic. Let me give one to everybody here for a second. Let me just give you this one. Do you need to get mail on Saturday? Are you dealing with your mail on Saturday? Or are you like me, you let it accumulate all week long, and maybe on Sunday, if you get some time, you start paying bills and dealing with all that stuff? But do you need to be getting the mail on Saturday? Why is it running 6 days a week and not 5 days a week? I'm sure that can cut some costs in some cases. I'm sure people will freak out at me about that. And if we have anybody who works for the post office who listens to the show, give me a call, 206-421-5757, and set me straight. Or say, hey, Ari, here's where there is a lot of waste. Just watch. People are going to go ballistic and say, he's trying to shut down the post office. You know, I understand why Benjamin Franklin created the post office, but, you know, technology changes. Anybody here hailing cabs anymore? Anybody? Anybody here buying DVDs anymore, except for the people in this building who buy special editions and special features? Is anybody buying that stuff? No, because technology has changed. Anybody going out and buying VHS? Mike, you don't buy VHS, do you? No. Oh, wait. Oh, he's getting the headphones.
Occasionally, yeah.
Occasionally buy VHS.
Yeah.
What's on VHS that's not on DVD?
Horror movies from like the 70s and 80s.
Oh, those kind of guys.
Like out of print stuff.
They haven't done
very
that kind
like
of stuff.
niche stuff.
I got you. Yeah. Okay. It's like the movie If Looks Could Kill. I can't find on digital anywhere. I don't understand why. It must be a licensing issue, a rights issue, or something like that. I do not know why that movie is not available for on demand. Johnny Grieco. Richard Grieco. Sorry, Richard Grieco.
Please.
Richard Grieco.
Booker's a good cop.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, there's some technologies that have evolved, and maybe collectors want something. There are still people who use film with cameras. I get that. But at the same time, it's time to look into something else. However, President Trump was having a lot of fun with the Governors Association, which is Democrats and Republicans. Every governor is a member of the American Governors Association. Here's what he said.
The American people expect every city and state to fully honor ICE detainer requests, and we hope they can, and to ensure the safe transfer of criminal aliens into federal custody for immediate removal from our country. You know, many of the countries said, we're not ever going to let them back. Under the Biden administration, I remember it's Venezuela. He's a tough guy. And others, they said, we're not letting them back. They're out of here, and you'll never bring them back. They're not coming into this country. And Biden said, well, we can't bring them back. They won't take them. Well, we took them. And every single country now You saw it with Colombia. You saw it with Venezuela. In fact, they actually offered to send planes to pick them up, and they'll pick them up so that we don't have to go through the expense of sending a plane. Is that correct, Marco? Even Marco couldn't believe that one. But they literally are sending planes to pick up these people. And they're rough people, and they're picking them up, and they're putting them in the planes.
By the way, the numbers have cratered on illegal immigrants coming across the border. They're not even trying anymore. We are solving the problem by actually just enforcing the law. You know who refuses to do so? Seattle's new woke police chief, Sean Barnes. He's only been on the job a few weeks, and he wrote in a statement that we got a hold of. In the wake of recent news and events, I want to address head-on any concerns or fears in our community regarding the Seattle Police Department's position on the immigration status of our community members. Let me be very clear. The policies of the Seattle Police Department regarding immigration status will not change. SPD is governed by state law in this regard, and immigration law and enforcement is exclusively the responsibility of the federal government. So basically what he's saying is that Seattle Police, under his watch, do not care about the rapists, murderers, and drug dealers. Gee, can't figure out why crime hasn't gotten any better around here if you don't want to deal with the rapists, murderers, and drug dealers, or if just to spite ICE you are ignoring the holds they're placing on these guys. And then they freak out. Oh, my God, they deported a murderer. Oh, my God, they deported a drug dealer. Donald Trump was talking about a whole bunch of topics today, including this one about the Middle East.
The same thing in the Middle East. We're going to have some good news in the Middle East. What happened yesterday, the sight of those babies was not acceptable to anybody. Nobody's seen anything like it.
People keep asking me, they go, Ari, what do you think is going to happen in the Middle East? We have a hostage release coming up on Saturday. It's the last one in this ceasefire round. You're supposed to be getting back 6 hostages on Saturday, 6 men on Saturday. And you know what I think should happen? The second those guys are back in Israeli custody, as soon as they're back in Israeli hands, no holds barred. Open it up. Just flatten the place. That's what I think we should be doing. We go to the Warrior Injury Law studio line, take a call from Nathan in Bellevue. Nathan, what's going on?
Hey, Ari. Hey, and you just prefaced it exactly. So I know it's Friday, and I don't want to bring the room down, but those videos of the Palestinians parading around a mother who apparently wasn't even in that casket, by the way, and 2 young dead babies, and celebrating it like it's some kind of 4th of July party. I don't know how you reconcile that. I really don't.
So
I don't know how.
I'll tell you this, Nathan, is that you have to think about it differently. We like to think everybody shares our values. We like to think every person on this earth shares our values, but they don't. They don't. That's why you go to the country that shares your values, or you have friends that share your values, or your church, or your synagogue, or whatever it is, share your values. And we keep trying to project American values on the rest of the world. And you know what? There's a lot of places where they don't share them. This is a death cult you're talking about in Gaza.
Yeah, and Ari, I have talked to you before, so I am like the only Republican in my entire family. I've told you this before, by the way. You may or may not remember me, but that's not important. But what I'm saying is that even my family, and they are liberal as liberal gets, looks at those kind of things and say something needs to happen. Now, and they may disagree with me on what needs to happen. In my opinion, some serious tough love. And I mean tough love meaning you either change or you die kind of love, you know.
That's how everybody with a soul feels, by the way. That's how every single person, because when you see the horrors that Hamas did, that's how everybody feels. And Nathan, I'm like you. Look, I'm a Jew, okay? And I know how many liberal Jews there are out there.
Yeah, I know that.
Right. And I know how many liberal Jews, and all my liberal friends are just like, enough is enough. Just go in there and flatten the place. We've had enough. We've had enough. Now,
no,
Nathan.
I just don't know how you fix that. And women and so they're saying it's just Hamas. It's not.
It's
Hamas,
not.
though.
I'm going to tell you a story that I heard this week. So we have a lot of friends who are tour guides in Israel, and one of them is married to a guy who is the Zohan. I mean, he is the Zohan. He is Mr. Badass Israeli soldier, commando, kill you with his pinky kind of guy. And apparently there was a story about this village nearby that he was telling me he was not involved in this. This was somebody else, where some Arabs came to the village to try and kill Jews. And what they did was they put the guy in a barrel, rolled him down a hill while the thing was on fire, and no Arab has come to try and kill Jews in that village ever again because they understand strength. They understand that. And these were just regular Israelis who go, don't screw with us. And the only thing you understand in the Middle East is strength. That's it. And right now what they're seeing is weakness, where we're giving them aid and everything else.
Well, and so one last thing.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to family. The only thing they're going to understand is the answer is no.
Yeah.
And whatever no means, that, I know Donald Trump's working on that now. I'm sure he is, by the way. And whether that includes just Israel or if that includes Marines, I'm kind of okay with it at this point, because once I saw that, and I know, people, I'm not a Marine, right? So I'm not sending myself. So I don't want to send somebody's kid over there but I also know that the Marines do what they do. They break things, and I almost said a bad word. I did not do so.
Well, think about this, Nathan. Not to cut you off, but when I was in Israel just now, there were a lot of U.S. military people around. But I'll say this, don't forget, we still have American hostages, and 44 Americans were killed, including children, by these terrorists. Nathan, I want you to make sure you're listening around 4:20 today. We're going to be discussing this issue more in depth, so make sure you're listening at 4:20. Appreciate the call.
I will be there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. When we come back, Amazon now has full control over the James Bond rights. Does that mean we're about to get Jamie Bond or something else? We'll find out. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KBI. There was a bombshell announcement in the entertainment industry earlier this week that Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson, who have been the longtime producers of the James Bond series, are going to be handing over creative control to MGM. Now, they're still going to be involved, but MGM is owned by Amazon, which means Amazon now has creative control over James Bond. You don't understand how much this family has held on to it since Albert Cubby Broccoli had it. There have been movies that haven't been made. There have been gaps in James Bond because this family has such control over this film series. If they don't like it, it don't go. So I'm kind of wondering how much money was offered to this family to make this happen. Now, I know some people are going, oh my God, we're going to get a trans James Bond or we're going to get something else. Guys, it used to be that if a company wanted to make money, they make the product that people want. So, for example, Como News is a little bit more conservative because people want Como News to be a little bit more conservative in this market. King 5 is taking their place as the more liberal news station, right? So Sinclair Media, which owns Como News, does things a little differently in this market because it's Seattle, and they can't be as harsh as they can be in a place, say, like Texas. It used to be you can count on a company to want to make money. Now, we like Amazon shows. I love the Jack Ryan show. It's not woke. It's spy stuff. I think it's great. We love the Reacher show. It's not woke. It's great. It's the Reacher stuff.
First 3 episodes of season 3 just dropped last night. I know what I'm doing this weekend.
I'm going to go check those out this weekend. So I'd say does Amazon make woke movies? Yes. Do they make garbage movies? Sure. For different markets. I'm going to stay cautiously optimistic that things will be fine, because there have been some really bad James Bond movies. And that was even with, look, Quantum of Solace, my God, what a steaming pile of garbage. And I'll remind everybody something else. When they cast the new James Bond, it's just like when they cast Batman. Oh, they're going to be the worst James Bond ever. Do you remember the vitriol that was thrown at Daniel Craig when he first got the job? I think Pierce Brosnan was the only one who got kind of a pass because everybody had been saying for years, yes, this guy would be great at it. He's kind of the only one who got a pass for a little while. Even Roger Moore, people gave crap to when he got the job. Ben Affleck is Batman. He's a fine Batman. It was the movies that had problems, not him. He was perfectly fine. I'm not that worried about James Bond.
I have a slightly different but the same kind of take. I think I'm a little more leery than you might be, Ari, because this announcement reminds me of when it was announced that Disney was going to be buying Lucasfilm from George Lucas. And I'm afraid that this is going to be something very similar, where it's going to be a lot of unwanted expansion of the James Bond brand. We're talking spin-offs, TV shows, comic books, cartoons, video games. And I think we're going to see a dilution of the brand very similar to what we saw with Star Wars.
I think that's a very fair criticism, and I think that's the one that's more realistic in terms of a criticism. You may see a Jamie Bond. Let's not forget the game they played with the last James Bond.
I don't think there's
going
to be any woke stuff. I think that's like a dog whistle false flag.
Right.
Or something.
But remember in the last movie,
get your tranny Bond out of here. Shut up.
Remember the last movie, there's a girl 007. And what it was he had retired, and they gave his number to somebody else. They were trying to make controversy. And
which I thought was kind of clever, actually, storytelling-wise.
It was.
Maybe Halle Berry's going to finally get her Jinx movie. I don't know.
No. But remember, there have been spinoffs, Mike. Do you remember James Bond Jr., the cartoon?
The cartoon.
I love
video
that
game,
show.
And comic book, yes.
So the question is, how diluted is it going to get? There's okay dilution. Plus, we love Ana de Armas. I mean, I'm a little skeptical about this whole John Wick thing, but I liked her fight in that James Bond movie.
Folded. Ari Hoffman pushed in his seat. I don't want this. I'm like, you literally said on the radio you do want this.
I want to see James Bond type girl. Whatever. Not the John Wick one. We're cutting each other apart here for no reason. Anyway, lots more to discuss as the show continues. When we come back, my friends, turns out Jay Inslee was kind of sort of breaking the law, and Bob Ferguson never called him out on it. Anybody surprised? You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming at KVI.com and the KVI app. If you want to be part of the most dangerous show on the airwaves, call or text the Warrior Injury Law Studio line at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Coming up at 4:45, we're going to put a smile on your face with Fake New Friday. And did Inslee break the law and Fergie did nothing about it? But before we get to any of that, this is basically do or die day in the Washington State Legislature for a lot of the bills they want to push through. Joining us now to discuss on the KVI studio line, Representative Andrew Barkis. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Hey, happy Friday to you, Ari. It's a good to be with you. And yes, it is cutoff day for House policy today.
So what nonsense are they trying to push through at the last minute?
Oh my goodness!
Too much to list.
Too much. You got a couple hours? Extended program here.
Okay, so then let's focus on just this one. Then House Bill 1768. What's going on with this one?
So House Bill 1768. This is really interesting. So the Housing Committee. The tone was set, day one of the session when we had rent control hearing on day one. Unbelievable. Set the tone. So housing, over the years, lots of good stuff and supply and everything else. But this agenda from the Democrats this year was unreal. The bills dealing with rent control, covenant homeownership, all these different things. But this was a bill, House Bill 1768, that basically prohibits the ownership of any more than 200 manufactured houses. So you think to yourself, you're like, well, okay, what are we trying to do here? Well, the goal, as they say, is they're trying to keep people in their homes. So this is a bill around that, but it's really about stopping REITs, these large, organizations that purchase communities and such and businesses. But they tailored it in such a way that it has unintended or intended consequences where anybody, any individual, any business entity, so you and I and a couple of people get together, we start buying homes, this law would say, well, once you get to 200, you're done. You can no longer buy any more homes. And, oh, by the way, if you violate that, you're going to have a $250,000 enforced by the Attorney General of Washington State. It's ridiculous. I mean, just the constitutionality of this, the precedence of this, we saw this and we went, oh my gosh. So we went to work yesterday, and let me put it, last day of cutoff. This is that we have a time frame. They've got 2-hour committee meeting. We got to get this bill out. They make this a priority bill, the last bill to come out, and we look at this and we say, we got to fix this. We put some amendments on it, and that's when the fireworks began as they tried to push this bill out.
So let me just make this more in layman's terms for everybody why this could be a bigger problem. There's a lot of people who own a lot of apartment buildings. Now you're going to have a problem because you're going to have people who are going to have to sell those buildings and the price is going to go up and they're going to have to recoup their investment from buying those buildings. But on top of that, what's to stop them at 200? What happens when they say now it's 100? What happens when they say now it's 50? What happens when they say, no, we don't want you to have an accessory dwelling unit on your property? See, this can go anywhere. They're setting a bad precedent of we can determine what you get to own. That's what I see as the biggest problem here.
Ari, I started to question what country I'm legislating in. This was ridiculous. We had another bill that didn't move, but we had a hearing on it that did the same thing to limit you from owning more than 25 investment properties. 25 investment properties. And so when you look at this situation, they put business entities. So these are LLCs, these are formations, all sorts of stuff. We have manufactured housing parks throughout our state owned by a myriad of entities. But they started to go into this and attack the people who own these under the premise that they're trying to help people with affordability to stay in these homes. Well, we already offered that by putting forth a voucher program. They turned it down. They turned down every piece of responsible legislation that we presented this year and instead started pushing this one out. So we put some amendments on it to try to, reason but draw the light on this to say, what are you doing? And to your point exactly, when you put this in law and legislation, it's a precedent. And so what's the next step? What's the next step on this? Well,
here's something else. Well, here's something else to think about for a minute. Are there any limits on how much affordable housing the government can own? Is that going to? Oh, yeah, see, because what they want is they want everybody subservient to the government and living in government housing. That's what they want.
Well, they of course they carve out everybody out of this bill, nonprofits, tribal communities, blah blah blah. I ran an amendment that I said, well, if you're carving out all these people, then what about minority-owned businesses? I mean, that has been a point of emphasis this legislative, as it always is, and should be. We want to focus on these good things. They did turn down the amendment after we argued on it for quite a while. We couldn't believe it. Why would you turn it down? We ran another amendment about women-owned businesses. So if you have an entity or LLC that's a women-owned business and they're buying properties and they happen to be manufactured houses, they turn that amendment down too. So, all right, this is a calculated move. This is another one of those policies. But the fact that they made it an emphasis point to get this out of committee on cutoff so that they can get it to the floor of the House to pass was mind-boggling to me, with all the other things that we should be dealing with. When it was all said and done, only 7 Republican bills passed out of the Housing Committee at this first stage. 18 Democrat bills passed out. And when you look at our focus of our bills that we were working on supply-side bills, landlord-tenant reform bills, get this, transparency bills. Their bills were all about homelessness, a lot of miscellaneous categories, some supply ones in there, affordability. And again, let's say we started with rent control and we went from there. It was an interesting day. I was very proud of our committee, the way it went. It just was, if you get a chance, watch the hearing. It's worth watching. And at the end, what was very odd, they brought it back. They opened up the committee again at 6 o'clock last night to run one more bill because they couldn't get it out because we ran out of time. And we decided, we're just not going to come back. So the Republican caucus did not go back to housing at 6 a.m. to run this bill because our work was done when it should have been done, when the committee ended and the work was done to cut off. It was precedent-setting day all the way around. And another example. Oh, let me just also add this. If you watch that, you'll see during our debate, they were so frustrated. They were literally cutting off our debate. They were shutting off our mics during our test as we were presenting these amendments. They were shutting off our mics. They were shutting us down because of quote unquote time. And of course, that frustrates everybody. It just went. It was absolute lunacy. But it is indicative of how this session is going and what it's going to be like on the floor because, they passed that rule that says they can end debate at any point in time.
Well, it looks like they're definitely starting to warm up. They're practicing with that. We're speaking with Representative Andrew Barkis out of Olympia. And here's something else regarding this housing mess is that right now they have made it so hard for the average person to build anything, to construct anything, to own anything, that now if they get rid of the big boys, the only ones who are going to be able to do any of this stuff is the government. What's going to happen is a lot of people are going to start bailing on this area. And then what's going to happen is these big boys also are going to be the ones, they're going to create more and more LLCs, and they're going to be the only ones left owning anything. So you talked about the rent control bill. Is that one going anywhere?
Well, it did. We had the hearing. They exected out of committee early. It's sitting in rules right now, so we'll be seeing that on the floor. Next week is the cutoff for fiscal policy, so that's the final stuff. And then March 2nd, we head to the floor for 10 days of floor action where we'll be quote unquote debating all these wonderful policies and passing bills, we're just waiting for that one to come up. We're preparing for the fight. We will be very prepared for the fight. I'm not done on that one. I'm not done on this one. If they think this bill that we talked about is coming to the floor without a fight, we're just getting warmed up. We're ready with our, all of our tools at our disposal to do everything we can to stop this kind of lunacy and this kind of bad policy for the people of Washington State. Again, we should focus on the things that we should be. Supply side, getting affordability where it needs to be, not these policies that are going to do just the opposite. And your point is spot on. At the end of the day, you're driving out the small housing providers. At the end of the day, all that's going to be left is government and also these big ones that they're already worried about. But they're coming at it in such the wrong way, and we try to tell them, we try to help them, we try to amend these bills in a way that shows, look, if you're going to do this, they should be better bills, but why are you doing them in the first place?
And I'm sure there's a bunch of bills that aren't going to be passed out. Like, for example, is the emergency powers bills moving forward or any of those that might actually, fix things like 975 days of emergency powers? Have you been following that one?
Yeah, surprisingly, we're pretty pleased with Governor Ferguson right now. I know I'm saying that live on the air. But it is, he has been sticking to his agenda, and there's negotiations happening right now with that particular bill. There are negotiations around his commitment to the law enforcement, the $100 million, to increasing law enforcement, in Washington State, and a myriad of other things that he's doing. So we've had many conversations. Our leadership from our caucus has actually had more meetings with the new governor, I think, than we ever had with the old governor in the entire time he was here. So that's good. That is good. We should have communication with the governor. And, we're hopeful, and we should be that way until otherwise noted, right? This is good, and I think that absolutely needed reforms with the emergency powers. I was all over that back in the COVID days. I was one of the first people to sue Governor Inslee. So, and then we lived through it for 975 days.
Exactly. Now, my friends, if you want to say no to House Bill 1768, which is going to affect your property rights, you call the legislative hotline. Be nice to the people who are answering the phone. They are not the legislators you're mad at. But say no to House Bill 1768. Call 1-800-562-6000. That's 1-800-562-6000. Representative Andrew Barkis, thank you so much for joining us today. Really do appreciate it.
Ari, always a pleasure. And, all the stuff that you're doing, getting this great message out, is having an impact. We're hearing from people more than we ever have. So please keep it up, and I'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Have a great weekend.
You too. Have a great weekend, my friend. Really appreciate having you. So remember, my friends, that's House Bill 1768. Say no to House Bill 1768 at 1-800-562-6000. That's 1-800-562-6000. Now, there may have been some complimentary words there for Bob Ferguson, but I have some questions about why, as Attorney General, he wasn't checking up on what Jay Inslee was doing. KOMO News has this story for us.
Yeah, Molly, this previously unseen report highlights a period between 2022 and 2023 and a list of improper transactions with your money. In a 20-page report, the Washington State Auditor has found scathing examples of spending and accountability in the state's Commerce Department, starting with a behavioral health community capacity grant to build out services in communities. Of the allocated $71 million, the department only paid out $10.5 and did not comply with requirements, sending money to 7 recipients who did not meet the criteria laid out by the legislature, including a $95,000 payment to an organization without documentation, another $1.27 million to an organization without reviewing site project photos, all of it non-compliant with state law, at a time when the state legislature approved a budget to increase capacity for behavioral health services. And yet another program, dubbed the Digital Navigators, got a $50 million legislative directive to increase broadband access. But auditors found money used for food and snacks, a phone case. And in both cases, money was slow to trickle out for legislative intended purposes and with little oversight. This report, this audit, makes it sound like the state is handing out millions of dollars without accountability.
Yeah.
Joe Wynn took over as state commerce secretary in January. In this audit, it talks about people spending money on food and snacks and iPhone cases.
Yeah.
Do you know where that money is?
Food and snacks, iPhone cases. We've made outreach and corrective measures as well. In some cases, we're going to be asking for resources to be sent back to the state. Commerce gives out funds to a larger organization, right, like an umbrella organization, and they send out resources as well. So we lost visibility in some of those cases where we were, granting this compliance.
Oh, please. Joe Wynn, Climate Commitment Act. Oh, it's not going to raise your money. Oh, we're giving out that money willy-nilly to anybody else. Spare me. Spare me. And where was Bob Ferguson during all of this? Millions of dollars going out the door, and we have a $12 to $16 billion budget deficit that they'll admit that we have? And all this money was flying out the door, flying out the door, flying out the door. Hey, are they addressing that in the legislature today? Of course not. By the way, the Climate Commitment Act has only gotten less transparent. You used to be able to search by agency to find out who they're giving this money to. Not anymore. How long is it until they shut down what we discovered for Washington Doge, the Washington State checkbook? How long until that gets shut down because they realize that now we're exposing all their dirty secrets? We need the feds to take a look at what's going on here because that's how bad this blatant, ridiculous spending of nonsense things is happening. It's not going to stop with this legislative session. I just hope the Republicans stand up there and start saying, hey, let's call out the self-service rooms we exposed yesterday. Lots more to discuss as the show continues, my friends. When we come back, the latest insanity from the Middle East. You won't believe what happened now with the Red Cross and Hamas. My God, the updates are mind-boggling. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.